Today I have my good friend and special guest, Dr. Pat McGauly. He is the one of the co-founders and also sits on our board. He's the one that does all the training, and I tend to talk a bunch if you don't know me already, but I'm going to try to be quiet and let Doc talk. But Doc, tell us what you do and your experience. I know you've been in combat before. I know that you've been a medic before.
Right. And, you know, my goal, in fact, I'll go back a little bit and say, you know, I was approached some years ago now, it kills me it's been that long,
Right.
By Jessica and asked, hey, we want to do something very similar to what soldiers do about learning how to take care of themselves,
Right.
if injured in, you know, the horrific way. What can we do to project knowledge and life-saving care out to the periphery, out to the frontline people?
Right, right.
And so we came up with a curriculum, we came up with a kit, and because our initial audience was Shreveport Police Department,
Right.
it had to fit in a certain spot, it had to be small, compact,
Sure.
but yet have exactly what was needed so that with the proper training, every officer would have the knowledge, okay, this is what I do if this happens to me.
Right.
And we used examples of past SPD officers, the Shreveport Police Department,
Right.
who had paid the ultimate price, who we felt, as in normal combat, the largest area of preventable death is hemorrhage.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
I can't do anything about a lot of other things, but
Sure.
hemorrhage is something that, with basic knowledge, you can control. So we came up with this little kit. The police officers can carry it on a rig belt, one way, this way, however,
Sure.
as long as they had it.
Right.
And inside is really everything you need,
Okay, let's turn that. We'll show that to the camera.
everything you need
Right.
to save your own life. This is quick clot combat gauze, and it is a hemostatic agent, and all that means is it stops bleeding.
That's right,
you know,
right.
$40 word, as all us
Right.
doctors, we tend to use one word that means a whole lot.
Right. And we
it's-
can't understand your signal.
Right, it's kind of, well, that's on purpose. It's kind of like Hebrew. One word says a whole lot.
Right.
So it also has a tourniquet, okay? And this is a SWAT T tourniquet. It has gloves as well. Although I found, you know, in the heat of the moment, you know, reaching for gloves and all that, the first
Right,
thing you're
the first
reaching
thing
for
that's right,
is a
that's right.
tourniquet.
Right.
And this can be used as either a tourniquet or a wrapping over,
Sure.
over a wound.
Right.
It's dual purpose. So within this one little kit, you have everything you need to save your own life.
That's right.
And so we began a curriculum that used this kit, started out with SPD. We started to teach them, this is what you need to do. The other thing was, it's one thing to read or watch a video, a blog, or one of the other things, but it's something else when you have to do it repeatedly,
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
over and over. So you're building muscle memory.
Right.
And the last place you want to have to fumble, you know, I barely remember that.
That's right.
Is in
That's
the
right.
time when
Yeah.
you're bleeding and you have to stop it.
That's
right.
right.
So we developed the curriculum where it wasn't slow death by PowerPoint.
Sure.
Where you had to do a group of exercises, putting tourniquets on, packing wounds. And is it the easiest way to do it? No. But is it the most effective? Absolutely.
Well, what I like about the training is that going through it a couple times is that it's all gross motor skills.
Absolutely.
And so the central nervous system, and I'm not a doctor, you correct me, but the central nervous system, you know, at 145 beats per minute, you start to lose fine complex
Right.
motor skills. And not that, you know, I know there's this big argument that, hey, this is a fine complex motor skill and you shoot a gun with it, and, you know, you still see, you know,
Well,
the picture, but still though.
The research has shown you don't. That's the problem. In fight or flight situations,
Right.
dire, you know, you see your blood.
That's right.
Your heart rate goes up, your vision narrows.
That's right.
You lose your color vision.
That's right.
In fact, you know, thinking back, memories if they're frightening, are generally in black and white. So the reason is because your fight or flight response hones you down to one task. And like every training, in the heat of battle, you're going to fall back on your lowest level of
And
training.
you've seen that before, though.
Well,
I mean, you see it in surgery.
I see it in a lot of things.
Sure.
But the bottom line is that we wanted to be able to have those fine motor skills not be needed, and that gross motor skills that you still have
That's right.
in the worst of times
That's right.
can take over. So we did this curriculum, worked it out with SPD, and ended up, well, I had no idea when I was talking to them at lunch at Maryland's that day,
Right.
that I would be here for 4 or 5 years. I don't even know how many
Yeah,
years
it's been
later.
almost 4 years now. Yeah.
And still teaching.
Sure.
Law enforcement. It began as law enforcement.
Right.
We then from SPD, the Louisiana State Police became involved.
That's right.
Came to our classes. Different agencies throughout the region.
Right.
In fact, have come and as have even federal agencies. And I'm more than happy. My job is to get this information
Yes.
to as many people as
Right.
possible. We are a nonprofit. We
Right.
I can't imagine how much money over time this has cost me, but I don't care.
Sure,
If
sure.
one person, and SPD alone has used these,
Almost
40,
50 times.
50
Almost
times.
50 times, yeah.
Most on civilians.
That's right. Every one of them been on civilians.
And
yeah.
so if I save through that person one life, or the sorrow,
That's right.
or for a family, the whole thing, if one is prevented,
Well, Doc, man, you
my
saved
job.
50 with the I mean, in all honesty, when it comes down to it.
but the bottom-
because we don't have the experience that you have.
But we've taught you that.
Sure.
You guys have taken the knowledge that we presented,
Right.
and actually put it on a spear point and rode it into battle. You've used it. It works. What frightens me is, for instance, the wildlife and fisheries people.
Sure.
Or the state police.
That's right.
They're out alone.
That just by themselves.
Even if they
yeah.
do make the radio call, they're how many 30 minutes,
Right.
40 minutes. And how long does it take to bleed to death?
I want to bring something up on that because it was on Police One, but it's also on shootingclass.com. You see it on Instagram. It's a great website / Facebook page / Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
But man, there's a video they showed. I think they show more than Police One. I may be misquoting. I saw part of the Police One, but I've seen the one on shootingclass.com. But they get in I think it's in Newtown, California. Anyway, it's in California, and they get in a car. The police officer get in a car chase with this cat. The cat hits him going to the projects. He runs off. They get in a foot chase. Well, the suspect runs past these guys. One of the guys comes down as the police officer. He lets one police officer pass, and it's an ambush is what it is.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a straight ambush, classic. And then he comes around, and as the police officer's running to him, he opens fire on the police officer. Well, the other police officer puts him down. I mean, great shots. He was definitely in gross motor skills. I know his heart rate had to be at 170 or more.
Right.
And puts him down, and then he's shot in the leg. Well, on the shootingclass.com video that they had, he's talking, and another officer comes up and they're talking. He's like, "I'm okay. I got shot in the leg. Well, he falls down. Well, then he goes,
That's not surprising.
yeah, well, you can tell. I don't know. You don't know that he's passing out, but you can tell by the officer.
He's
the other
losing-
officers,
he's
yeah.
he's bleeding out.
Well, the other officer goes. He says, and I'm not. And believe, no one's criticizing anybody, but I just want to make a point here because you do the best you can when you're out there. And if you've ever
Right.
been in any of that, you just do the best you can.
Right.
Well, the other officer tells him, "Get your belt and use your belt." In 2019, why are we? And this is just a question. And when I saw it, I was like, "Why is he having to use his belt?" I mean, truthfully, man, this should be exploding everyone. I don't mean necessarily just first chance, but learning how to use a tourniquet, learning how to use homeostatic gauze.
Well, they have programs. The federal government put Stop the Bleed program out there. Different agencies do it different ways. I've just not found, in general, for myself,
Right.
and once again, the knowledge and the motor skills, teaching the motor skills
Right.
to the police officers. In other words, I'll use an example here.
Yeah.
We had an officer in a different agency, well, I won't name them, who was shot in the leg. He had gone through my class at a well, it was a different class, but we had this teaching.
Right.
And he didn't have enough money for a kid himself, so I gave him one of mine.
Sure.
I guess I need another kid.
Yeah,
But anyway,
no big deal, yeah, no big deal.
but the bottom line was he used it on himself. This happened about 6 months after he had taken the course.
Sure.
The bottom line was he knew what to do, okay?
And it's gross motor skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, he pulled his kid off. The officer that was with him helped him wrap the tourniquet, you know, under his direction, and he lived. He's back at work.
That's a great, man, that's
So,
awesome.
so the point is that this works.
It does
It's
work.
proven that it works. And if a small agency in northwest Louisiana can do this, so can anybody else.
Right.
My only worry with some of the national programs is they don't give the repetitive skills
Sure.
necessary for motor memory when they do these teachings. I would love, you know, to be able to say to them, you've got to have them do.
You have to, because it isn't like, this is just
Exactly.
estimation, like 10,000 hours worth
Right.
of repetition in order for something to become habit.
This is an hour and a half, 2-hour class.
Well, I'm just talking about after you present the material
Right.
to continue to make it part of your training.
Right.
You know.
And you know, we've honed this presentation down.
Sure.
Like I said, it's an hour to 2 hours, let's say.
Right.
And now the civilians are involved.
That's,
you know,
that's right.
we've
We
taught,
got active shooter going. You
right.
got armories going. Yeah.
And
I'm
we've
with you on
had
that, yeah.
as many, you know, almost as many participants here lately in the civilian realm as we do, you know, because I hate to say this in the world we live in, it's not if,
That's true.
it's when
I agree.
and
with you.
where.
I agree.
And
I mean, you could be eating lunch with your family.
absolutely.
I mean, you could be at the grocery store just buying some groceries.
I'll tell
I mean,
you
could be
another
anywhere.
story.
Go with
I
it.
was eating lunch here, and a lady had who was on anticoagulation for a condition cut herself
Right.
at the restaurant,
Right.
and was bleeding profusely.
Right.
So, you know, I got up, I carry one of these kits.
Sure. So do I. I'm the same way.
I mean,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Right.
It's probably embarrassing, you know, to my family,
Right.
but there's one of these on me, or at least where I can reach it anywhere. And went and put the combat gauze, you know, on her to stop the bleeding, wrap this around her, and she was fine. And so that's what I want to project
Sure.
to everybody, so that, you know, there are, you know, no preventable deaths if with the right knowledge. That's
Sure.
my goal.
I do want to bring this up while you say it, because I'm sure if, you know, some people watch, I've heard before, and you and I think I've talked about this, is that, you know, you see someone go down, let's just say it's like that,
Yeah.
they're afraid to act.
Well,
they feel they're gonna be sued.
you've actually been shot yourself.
Oh yeah, well, you know, that's another story for another day. But if someone goes down, some people are reluctant to help because
Right.
but the truth is the law covers them. In Louisiana, this is
Correct.
Louisiana law. I can't speak for anywhere else.
Well, it's the Good Samaritan law.
Yeah, it's the Good Samaritan law. So
Where if you go to help and you stay within the basic scope, which this is as basic as it gets.
Yeah, you stop the
and
bleeding.
use-
or you-
and,
yeah.
and, you know, you call EMS, do the right thing anyway, you're covered
Yeah,
by law.
That's right.
That-
And it doesn't mean you won't go through it, but it means that you can give a helping hand.
Right.
That's- and that's what this
and
is
the
about.
other thing that about our training is that when I train you, I'm certifying that you were trained in how to use this.
Right.
So that's a big deal also when it comes to something like that, where you have a certificate that said, I went through this
That's
training.
exactly right.
And I went through this training
That's
by
right.
a physician.
That's right.
That's teaching this class.
And not only a physician, guys, a guy that's in surgery. I mean,
Well, I'm
you-
an
you know what I
ER
mean?
guy, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm an
he
you know,
knows what he's doing.
But I do work at a level 1 trauma center,
Right,
and we
that's
see a lot of trauma.
Yeah, so-
And
Haven't you used one of those?
yeah, I was going to tell you that
Yeah.
story. You know, I guess
Yeah,
we're full
talk
of them. You know, young man, well, a bunch of young men had been shot by AK-47s
Okay.
at a card game.
Sure.
One of them, a young man, was basically dead on arrival. In other words, he had been shot in the knee and was catastrophic. And, you know, one of the things that you have to realize with all this is that how long does it take to bleed to death? You're talking minutes.
That's right.
And then remember, in part of those minutes, you've lost enough blood where you're not thinking straight.
That's exactly right.
So the faster you get these kits on, the better off you'll be. So back to the story, the young man comes in, he's got no blood pressure. We put him on a machine that we have that pumps blood into you at an incredible rate, got his heartbeat back, got a tourniquet on that I had to take off. I didn't have it in that part of the ER, and I had to take it off a SPD officer that had responded and was waiting. So I took this, just like I'm doing here, took it off, put it on him, and he lived, okay? Now, he did something, I'm very proud of this young man. He came back, you know, he lost his leg, but he came back and said thank you. 20 plus years. Yeah, 20 plus years of doing this, and that was the first person who has come down specifically and said, thank you, sir. You know, you saved my life. And, you know, he's got his life together. He's going, you know, wants to be a nurse, and that day comes, I can't wait to write that letter of recommendation.
Man, that is a great deal.
So,
I mean, that's a great story.
So yeah,
everybody needs to hear that.
I use them in the ER when there's, but it's just that some agencies, now it's changed a lot now, just due to the nature that enough of this has gotten out, the knowledge has gotten out, that you see tourniquets, but up until 2-3 years ago,
and the deal,
they wouldn't use them.
No, they wouldn't use them. The other thing with that is, though, is that, and nothing, I'm glad we're seeing more tourniquets everywhere, but it's the training. The difference in this program with First Chance is that for LEO and civilians alike, you get the training that you're talking about. You actually get the repetitions and they don't just, no one's handing you something and saying,
here,
hey man, attach this. And that's what happens on departments, though.
Or they'll say, well, here's the kit, here's the video, and expect you, you know, because how many times do you go to YouTube to find out how to do something, okay? And until you actually do it, looking, I don't know about you, but you know, looking at the video, you're scratching your head thinking, wait a minute, is it this way or is it this way? So, you know, you take the object, whatever it is, and you line it up. Practical experience is what taught you, not that video.
No, it didn't.
You know, the video gave you the rudimentary outline, but you actually had to figure the repair out.
That's right.
And this bypasses all of that, gives you that knowledge, repetitive muscle memory.
That's right.
That once again, when your fight or flight response kicks in, you don't have to think about.
That's right.
You just go, you reach, you know, and that's the other thing. They've got it on them. They reach for it, pull it out. They've had to put these things on in our curriculum by themselves. So assuming that you're a lone officer down situation, that's the basic presumption here. Here's how you save your life. And it's worked. You know, we've seen it. It has by far been one of the best things I've seen in this region.
No, I totally agree with you. And you know, I can't speak for anywhere else, but and I kind of want to shift to go to the tourniquet itself, because I have one on me. I carry them on me myself. This is SWAT T. All this is a piece of rubber. I mean, really.
Well, yeah. You know, it kills me because in our presentation, you know, you have to do your, you have to do your disclaimers, and I'm thinking, why wasn't I smart enough? You know what I'm saying?
Man, we would be
to take
an
inner tube and turn it into a tourniquet. But thank God somebody did. You know,
it's true,
and
that's why I want to talk about the SWAT T, because I know it'll come up, because it's come up at least once or twice for me, and that is that y'all never mind the train. There's a train coming by here. So
the light at the end.
One time, I'm not going to say the unit, we were training with a unit in Mississippi, and great guys, and one of the guys had seen what I was wearing. Of course, they were carrying the RAD tourniquet, the L tourniquet, which, okay, that's fine,
that's
whatever.
fine.
And I mean, he reached down, he said, "What's that?" And I showed him, he goes, "That doesn't work." And I said, "That's not true at all." I was like, at that time, I said, "We've saved almost 40 people with these and they do
Right.
work." He goes, "Well, man, your hands get bloody and it slips." I said,
No,
"Well,
it doesn't."
I said, "Well, man, I'm going to be honest with you. You know, I've applied this at least twice to actual people in
Victims.
car accidents
Right.
or victims that were shot, and my hands were bloody, and it didn't happen. Could it happen? Sure, it could, but these are effective.
Right.
Just as effective as
It's-
anything else."
The best thing about them is they're so easy to train with. Now, or a cat T tourniquet or rat T tourniquet, all those different, band type tourniquets.
Sure.
They work, okay? If you're getting in a helicopter flying 100 miles, maybe, that's an idea.
Sure.
However, these are just as effective.
Yeah, I agree.
And they're
There's no
easy to
doubt.
train. They don't slip. Once you get the bite, of an overlapping loop, you can crank
Right.
down on them. And once again, I know I keep going back to this. I hope y'all don't get bored over it. But once, because we do the same thing, in the training, in that, once you bite down on it and you pull down on it, you can crank down until
That's right, dude. And
it
it's
stops.
tight. And it's tight.
And one of the ways in the class, we know, how do you know when it works? When you
That's
don't
when
feel
you
a
feel your
pulse.
pulse, that's right.
And so we do that.
Right.
And the people in the class do that. So they know not only how to apply it,
Right.
they know how tight to apply it.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And that's a big difference. Because even a regular tourniquet, that have been used for years, okay, if you've never applied it, or you've never applied it to yourself, how tight do you do it? Well, yeah, you're going to tighten it up till you see the bleeding stop. I mean, hopefully, but people in that frame of mind at that time sometimes don't,
Sure.
especially if it's themselves and they're alone. That being said, the one beauty of that, with that tourniquet is that you apply how tight it is. You've learned it in the class.
That's right.
This is how tight I need to apply it.
Sure. That's
Okay.
right, that's right.
And there's always in the first iteration, hey, the one that still has a pulse. No, that's not. And there we are able at that point to say, no, this is what you need to do.
Right.
So that in subsequent iterations, they do it right. And it really, it's fun as a teacher when that kind of light bulb goes off and
Right.
they realize, this is what, because it does not take very long
Sure.
to bleed to death.
That's right.
And you've
I don't know
got,
how many people really know that.
in less than, if it's a big enough wound, it may be less
Right.
than a minute before you're not
Sure.
thinking, you've lost your ability.
Sure.
And that's what scares me about that officer in California. He, still has the fight or flight going on. The adrenaline has not let his brain know that he's bleeding out.
Sure.
And,
That's right.
and intervention is necessary. And you're
Right.
right. When an officer was fatally wounded here,
That's right.
his fellow officers were doing everything
And they
they
could.
possibly could.
But they didn't have that.
But they didn't have this. They had
right.
T-shirts. They had,
They had belts. They had
well,
T-shirts.
the
They had all,
belt.
but they weren't able to
the
do anything.
wound was too high for
That's
a
right.
belt.
That's right.
But they didn't have the combat gauze. And one of the things that I show in this is just how much bleeding this really can stop.
That's right.
It's phenomenal.
And I've seen that in the video with the pig. And
Right.
Yeah.
It's a 200-pound pig.
And I'm sure some people have seen that.
Yeah,
on YouTube
and
or
I
whatever.
encourage you, and I encourage you to go look for it.
Yeah.
But this one pack of combat gauze, this is about 4 meters long.
Right.
Stops the bleeding from a cut femoral artery, which is a hose pipe. And so if it can stop that, it can certainly slow it down enough to get you that golden hour to get to me
Right.
that I can put the blood back in you.
That's right.
And that's the goal. Because, it's one thing if you're live in an inner city and you're 5-6 minutes from a medical center.
Right.
Or a trauma center, even better. It's something else if you live in the rural areas where, like I live, where it may be 10 or 15 minutes before they even find me.
Sure.
Much less get me to a trauma center.
It's true.
So, you're looking at a half an hour to 45 minutes in a lot of cases, if not longer.
Right.
And I just, if I had my wish tomorrow, I would have this knowledge to everybody.
That's right.
So that no matter what you did, you know, and it's not just police officers.
That's right.
Okay, I get loggers who've sliced parts of themselves up.
What about frackers?
Or yeah, well, they get pipes that cut them. Other thing, you know, on industrial accidents. We recently have talked to one of the big industrial people in one of the parishes, where they do get, you know, the risk of bloody wounds in the machinery process. Here's what you do, and that way the workers themselves become frontline agents. If something happens, they know what to do.
Right.
It's not a guess. It's not a, well, you know, they did show that video or they did this. They've done it. They know. They put the tourniquet on. They put the combat gauze on. You know, have emergency services en route, and the outcomes are better.
Right.
And that helps everybody. I mean, but you know, in my case, the person. I mean, that's really the only thing I care about one way or the other, is that person goes on.
Right.
Rather than expires.
Exactly.
And that's my goal. You know, I just, you know, if I never see another patient, which, you know, isn't going to happen.
That's right.
You know, wouldn't hurt my feelings, but certainly a patient that's been injured and is a preventable death, in other words, to be able to have bleeding stopped at the scene where they keep more of their blood inside themselves.
That's right.
I've done my job.
That's right, man.
And so that's why we do this, so that if one person, and we've got 50 or whatever, I'm a happy camper. I mean, it's made my sacrifice well worth it.
Right.
I'm just worried that there's not this knowledge. You know, we go to smaller municipalities,
right,
and especially in smaller, you know,
rural areas,
less wealthy areas, and they've got they have no knowledge.
No.
And one of the things I like about this program is we live on donations. It all goes to these kids.
That's right. No one makes a dime at all.
Not a penny.
No.
You know, I mean, if you looked at the percentage, it's almost, you know, the percentage of what we spend, it's 100%. Because, you know, gas getting places, we do that ourselves.
And then time and teaching and curriculum
right,
development and all those things.
And
that's right.
we don't charge for that.
That's right.
And so when we get donations, in other words, we have a program and an agreement that if an agency gets a donor, and most agencies have somebody in their region that's willing to do it, all that money will go to that agency. In other words, you know, we're not taking some money from this person to do to that person.
Right.
Everything you give $5 or whatever, you know, whatever for your kits, that's how many kits you're going to get.
Right.
And it comes with the training.
Right.
And you know, I think that's a big advantage in the sense. Now, you know, it's not financially lucrative, but it's emotionally and heartfelt lucrative.
That's exactly right, Dave.
In the sense that if I can teach that, and we did that with the first story I told you, in the northwest part of Louisiana, it's a small rural sheriff's department. If we've extended that knowledge to one person that saved his own life, why can't we do it?
It's true.
Elsewhere.
And the deal is, it's not money driven, it's purpose driven.
Right.
But you have to have the finances to push the training on. And that's what we want to let you guys know, is that this training is available for anybody. Actually, it's LEO. You know, we want to train all law enforcement, especially in the rural communities, but it's also for civilians, because we don't know what's going to happen. What's going to
and
go
this
on
is where, you know, we started with churches where we are now.
That's right. Active shooters in churches, man.
In churches. And it's disgusting. It boggles my mind, but it happens.
That's right.
And if you have the knowledge of what to do in the aftermath, in other words, after something horrible happens, you have all these people standing around. They're going to try to help.
Right.
But if you have kits, you actually can help.
And that's what's funny before we end. You know, we concentrate, well, I know in law enforcement, but I also hear civilians talk this way. You know, you have an active shooter, or someone comes in and they're actively killing people, we focus on the shots fired,
Right.
and, hey, putting them down, but we don't spend a whole lot of time on the aftermath.
Right.
You're exactly
The
what you're saying
immediate-
is exactly
right.
right.
It's the
afterwards is like crazy important.
It's the immediate aftermath.
That's right.
In other words, it's that critical time. Okay, the actual event has moved on. It may be in the intervening minutes or seconds even, people are dying.
That's right.
Okay, you've stopped the killing.
That's right.
Now you've got to stop the dying.
That's right, dude.
Okay, so my goal is to empower as many people as possible to stop the dying.
That's right.
Once it's done, it's done. But there is something you can do about it afterwards.
Right.
Because they're victims on the ground, they're bleeding, and with combat gauze, with a tourniquet, you can stop the hemorrhaging.
That's right.
I mean, wherever it is,
Right.
There's a way to stop the bleeding. And they had some high-profile cases here.
That's right.
Where SPD has put, combat gauze and other things in untraditional places.
That's right.
But that's all they had.
Yeah, dude, but that's it, and it worked.
And it worked.
Yeah, that's
And and an unfortunate victim, a high-profile victim, that's what we've all figured saved his life.
That's right.
Because he didn't bleed out.
That's right.
And so, that's what we want to get out there.
Right.
Is the knowledge. This is what you do. And, don't feel helpless. Don't just stand there.
Right.
Get involved.
That's right.
And use the knowledge that you've been trained on. Get to work.
That's right.
You've got muscle memory. You know what to do. Just do it. And it's not like I said, it's not a video or a, hey, I saw that once.
Like you're actually working and
You
doing
actually
it,
have
getting the
done
muscle
this,
memory and the repetition.
and
Yeah.
I'm confident in
Yeah.
the knowledge that I got. I know what I can do.
That's right.
And that's what we want to project as far out as we can.
That's right. Thanks, Doc.
Anytime,
Man, you're a
brother.
great dude. I appreciate it. Guys,
Anytime.
remember, check us out on First Chance on Instagram or Facebook. If you're interested in training, just get on Facebook. You'll find us there. Shoot us a call, shoot us an email. We'll be glad to train you. Thanks for your time. Until then, be safe.
Amen.